In this episode, we have a 2025 astrological forecast for you. We talk about the different astrological events that are scheduled to happen throughout the year and how they may affect you and the rest of the world.
Let's talk about what intuition really is.
Let's look at all the places intuition and ego show up in your life.
Let's share honestly.
Let's do the research.
I'm Jamie Hayhurst.
I'm Heather Wood.
This is the Intuitive Girl's Guide.
Hey, Jay.
Hey.
Happy 2025.
Here we are.
We're back a week late. It's my fault.
You were a little sick.
I was a lot sick. And when we're talking about the astrology of 2025, we're going to give you a little forecast to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And when I start this out, I just want to say I am so in line with astrology, Jamie, because I started this year out like
Tough.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even today, our first day back recording has been a series of ridiculous, unfortunate events on my end. You're fine and patient, I might add. As someone who prides herself on having her shit together and being ready and prepared as a Taurus, I was not.
Well, I've just been begging to not get the norovirus. I don't care what happens to me. I just don't want that.
I don't know what I had. If
you didn't have that.
RSV or
something like that. Yeah.
It was terrible. I'm still suffering. You can hear it in my voice. I know.
A little bit.
We had to push off a week because even though I was better, I sounded hideous, and I would never do that to all of you.
Yeah, it was a little tough.
Yeah. So welcome to 2025. I hope yours came in a little better than mine.
Yeah. Mine was better. Yeah. No,
yours was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't complain so far.
Okay. Well, 2025 in Chinese astrology is the year of the snake.
Yes. Love a snake. One
of my favorite quotes, I wish I remembered who said this because it wasn't in me researching this currently, but someone said the symbolism of a snake is shed the dead.
Yes.
And that always stuck with me. And I feel like if you could sum up what 2025 is going to be like, I know we're already in it, but what's going to continue to happen, shed the dead gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah, 100%.
I know that sounds maybe dark.
I agree. No, I agree.
But
completely.
Let's shed the dead.
Yeah, let's get on with it.
Okay. So we started this year out, Jamie, with Mars in retrograde.
Yes.
Okay. It's currently, at the time of recording this, in retrograde. It's in retrograde until February 23rd. It goes direct on the 23rd.
Right.
Okay. Mars is action.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's not just running and jumping. It's what's my plan to launch forward?
What are you doing? Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So if your 2025 started out and you had this kind of plan or idea and it fell apart, if you're having a little trouble getting your footing onto a plan, if the action steps you're taking, you're hitting a wall,
right,
or you're just not finding flow, I just want to tell you that that's right in line with what a Mars retrograde feels like.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Now listen, sometimes people will be like, oh my God, that's not happening. Is there something wrong with me? No. In fact, I encourage you to go, it's very easy to find, go look up your own
chart,
forecast for 2025 and your own natal chart and how you'll be affected. Don't just look at your sun sign. At least look at your big three.
Or hire an astrologer.
Or be a real smart person. I want to do this, Jamie.
Same.
And hire an astrologer to do your entire natal chart if you haven't had that done already.
Yeah.
But to also give you a little heads up about 2025.
Yeah, I agree.
Different signs are affected differently. Also, different areas of your life are affected differently, especially depending on what you need to shift and change. A retrograde is a switch in direction.
Yes.
Okay. So if you think of the planet, it's literally not orbiting in the same way it usually does.
Looks that way, yeah.
I mean, it just changes position. We move past it or it moves past us. So the way the energy of that hits you is going to be different. Depending on how much growth you've had in that area is going to depend on, that's how it's going to affect you.
Right.
If you've done a lot of work in how you take action, you might find it less bumpy.
Right.
If you're in the middle of that, you might find it bumpy. If you have been avoiding that, buckle up.
Yep. Or if you're like just finishing up the work on something, you might get one last little bump in the road.
Like, I feel like for you, without revealing any personal information, the year came in relatively smooth.
Yes.
But I see these like little end caps on things for you.
Yes, correct.
These little like, ooh, slight adjustment here.
Right.
Ooh, let me finish off this and change this.
Yep.
Ooh, this is no longer working. But it isn't like life altering.
No, right.
It's just, so you may have not been able to get off the couch like me and like literally take no action.
Right.
Or you might just be feeling it that way or somewhere in between. Yeah. It's all okay. Just look at how it's affecting you.
Yep.
From March 1st to April 12th, Venus goes into retrograde.
Okay.
Now, not a big talked about retrograde, Venus retrograde. However, I feel like Venus retrograde has a big effect on people and they don't...
Yeah, you always say that.
They don't clock it.
Yep.
So love, beauty, wealth in the form of like abundance wealth. Okay. These are things affected by Venus. So this retrograde really does take, it's one of those ones that like every little element of your life is affected because it's like everywhere you see beauty or feel beauty or everything that you love like gets slightly altered in a way and like your perspective on it shifts a little bit. So if you suddenly are like, why don't I like that anymore? Why don't I want to do that anymore? Why does this feel weird? Or why am I suddenly drawn to this new thing?
This big haircut.
Oh yeah. So it's in Aries and Pisces during the retrograde. Okay. So that's going to do like a lot of personal level shifts that create big changes.
Right.
Anytime you've got Aries.
Yep. Big change.
Big stuff. Okay. Yep. And then you got Pisces, you get a lot of emotional stuff going on. Okay. This is the one that I'm bracing for the most, Jamie. So are you ready? Neptune is going to be in Aries. Okay. It begins its move to Aries on March 30th.
Okay.
Okay. So you've just, Mars finally went direct. Okay.
Right.
You're just getting a little footing. Venus is already in retrograde. March 30th is going to hit you.
Okay.
Neptune has not been in this sign since the early 1800s.
Really? Wow.
So it's going into Aries, and the last time it was in Aries was the early 1800s during like the very end of this shift was the end of the Civil War.
Okay.
So if you want to think about, especially in America, what was happening.
Yep.
But at the time of the Civil War, there was immense shifts in other countries too. I don't want to make this all about America.
Just Americans, right?
But there is definitely a lot about equality. There was a lot of breaking down of patriarchy.
Yeah.
So just
feels
brace yourself.
Good. Yeah. No. I mean, yeah.
But you heard me say war.
You don't get to systemic change through smooth times. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
There has to be upheaval. There has to be big change. It has to be tumultuous.
Yeah. Well, 100%. It's not going to be smooth is what I'm trying to allude to nicely, why am I alluding nicely?
And patriarchy isn't letting go of its power without a fight.
Yeah.
So if that was the Civil War or if that's the, whatever is happening now in this country,
I'd also like to point out that Neptune was in Pisces before it's moving into Aries. It's been in Pisces since 2011.
Okay.
Now, Neptune represents dreams and illusions, delusions, visions, like all things like that.
Yep.
Okay. So if you look at what was going on in 2011, you see a big rise in social media. It's not the beginning of social media. It's the beginning of social media becoming as culturally relevant as it is today.
Right.
And also a big change in just media and art in general.
Yep.
Okay. So you're seeing that come to a close and something new happen. So if you're, at the time we're recording this, we don't know what TikTok's future is going to be like, but it doesn't look good. But
something's happening.
The fact that things are kind of,
and people are boycotting Meta. And,
because of their ridiculous
everything.
Policies and
Mark Zuckerberg.
I'll try to reel that in. But all of that. Right. Okay. Obviously, there's going to be some kind of big change. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make a prediction. Ooh. Are you ready? It's going to be on the record. So
let's hear it.
I think there's going to be a bunch of new platforms happening.
I hope so.
So I think look out for that. I think they're going to feel very different in a good way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, this move into Aries it shows a change in visionary leadership and global advocacy. That Aliza Kelly's words exactly. I want to credit her for that because I liked the way she worded it.
Yeah.
Visionary leadership and global advocacy, world changes.
I would love that.
So that starts March 30th. So if you're feeling a little clenchy about what's happening right now, I think there's going to be some changes then.
I am, in fact, feeling clenchy.
Same. Okay. Saturn also enters Aries. This is a lot of Aries energy in this year.
Good.
Okay. On May 24th.
Okay.
Okay. So this is like boundaries, structure, but also like with Neptune and Aries too, that's dreams and illusions. So like these are both, I think it's called conjunct. Mm-hmm. Like they're both in that sign and that's going to cause some kind of a clash.
Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now I think, like we've been talking about forever, that this is going to be like a rough clash, but like to something good.
Yeah, like the Tower.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be bumpy, but I think we're going to be happy about it.
Got it.
Okay. But basically the way you balance those two things is going to be like there's upheaval there.
Okay.
So the last time Saturn was in Aries was 1996 to 1999.
Okay.
So I would say, you and I discussed this before, but like try to remember what was going on in your life at that time because there's a closing of some sort of chapter for you.
Huh.
Okay. Now, we both say we're always bad at this when like astrologers or whoever is like, what was happening at this time in your life? Like for me, I'm always like, I don't know.
Well, and for that time I was graduating high school and starting college.
Yeah.
Right in that window.
I was getting to the end of high school at this time. I guess this was high school for me.
Yeah.
So like, it's hard to think back though to those times and go like, what was starting?
Yeah.
My whole life.
Well, exactly. My whole life. Yeah. My whole life. And that was right before my dad died too.
Yeah. So I think like look at it, but don't force it. Just kind of like let it be sort of in the like in your peripheral vision and like anything that comes in. But things that you started maybe coming to a close, that doesn't mean they end. It means that the way that goes, like the book doesn't close, the chapter closes. So like some of it's going to come into the next part, some of it's not.
Yep.
At least it's going to shift the way you see it. So I think you're going to see a lot of like relationship upheaval in this, to be honest, because I don't know. I feel like the timing of that,
I'm already seeing some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're going to.
Marriages ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if your marriage is cuspy, just like maybe save some dates around there.
Cuspy marriage.
Okay. I have a few more.
Okay.
But I think we should take a quick break and let everyone breathe about all those changes.
Okay.
Because I don't have less changes coming out.
Oh, okay. Great.
We'll be right back after this short break.
You know what goes great with podcast listening?
A great cup of coffee from a great coffee shop.
Yep. Beans roasted in-house, amazing baristas. You know where I'm talking about.
Restoration Coffee. Can we go?
Yes, I need an Americano and maybe a panini too.
Ooh, I need blueberry maple latte and probably a resto bowl.
Ooh, yeah. Check them out and visit restoration-coffee.com.
Let's talk about what we're obsessed with this week. All right, Heather. This week, I would like to acknowledge the death of Mike Rinder.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, or if you're a fan of the The Vow and the Scientology and that
Leah
whole
Remini's
Leah
stuff,
Remini's series. Mike Rinder
Mm-hmm.
was like a really major part of the Scientology cult.
And taking it down.
And he got out of it, and he got other people out, and then he helped to try to take it down. He did a lot of work with Leah Remini.
Yeah.
And like, we spoke so much about Mike and Leah, and he died of cancer, I think last week.
Yeah.
It was so sad.
I know.
And I just felt like I should bring it up and acknowledge him. Like, the work that he did, is incredible.
I think that, I'm going to speak for both of us, but you can correct me.
Yeah.
That Leah and Mike together and their work on the Scientology stuff really solidified us into being obsessed with cults.
Yeah.
I credit
yes,
them.
I agree.
Because of the way they presented it and
the
I'm out and now I'll take it down.
Correct.
Shit that we love.
And he did that like for obviously himself and in Scientology. And then he worked with other people like in other cults. And he was always like so willing to speak about his experience like with other former cult members in their documentaries, on their podcasts, like talk about like doing the work or like walking the walk. Like Mike didn't just save himself.
Yeah.
He worked to save other people and to help dismantle other cults. And I think his work was so profound. I
agree. I think there's a lot of stuff he did that we don't even know. Like, just privately helping people out.
Right.
And I know that, I'm not sure if this was true at the time of his death, but for a lot of his life out of Scientology, he had lost like children and family members to Scientology.
Yeah, like last I heard, there were still family members he did not speak to because of it.
And I really admired how he really owned up to the bad things he did when in Scientology without making a lot of excuses for it.
Yes.
In fact, I think he could have afforded himself more excuses for it.
No, he was really honest. He really owned up to he took his own responsibility for what he did, which made him more believable and likable, because that's what you want to see in people. Like, I did this, I caused this harm, and now I want to make it right. And I think Mike was always really not happy to do that, but he always was willing to take responsibility.
And I think that helps you in not just in the case of a cult, but like to watch someone like own something and say I did it and now I'm fighting for it to be better, and I own that, I take responsibility, and now I want things to be better. I think that is a beautiful thing to admire and be inspired by in any part of your life.
I agree. I completely agree.
I hate cancer, and then it takes such amazing people from us.
I know. Yeah. I just wanted to acknowledge him.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike Rinder.
Mike. Yeah, you're the best.
I bet he's like on his little journey on the other side. I know sometimes we get criticized for not being woohoo enough. So here you go.
Oh yeah.
I bet he's having a good time learning the things.
Exactly.
Exploring the things.
And downloading all the things he took from this life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. I like to think about that.
He had a brave journey over here.
Yeah. Shout out.
Yeah.
All right, back to the astrological havoc.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
June 9th.
Okay.
Jupiter moves into Cancer.
Okay.
So Jupiter is like travel, wealth, education, law, luck, all of these categories.
That's why it's a good year for Cancers, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. But Jupiter has been in Gemini since May 2024. So it's like just over a year when it changes signs.
Yep.
Moving into Cancer is kind of a big deal here, because in this area of patriarchy, we haven't had a lot of breakthroughs. And typically when signs go into Cancer, I want to say this part carefully because I think it can be heard wrong or misconstrued. But Cancer is a very like feminine energy, meaning like, again, not gendered. Please take that out. I know some people misuse it that way. I want to be respectful of that. But in all of the ways that I mean anti-patriarchal, like in a matriarchal healing is very Cancer, which is like very nurturing, growth, healing, honesty, emotion. I think of like, when I think of Jupiter in Cancer, I literally think of like being in a circle of women and everyone screaming at the same time to get rid of shit.
Right.
Like that kind of intense, that's the word, like intense release while you're being like, space is being held for you.
I was going to say protective.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
So I also think that when a sign like Jupiter, which I sort of think of also as like big spiritual concepts as well. Mm-hmm. When something like that goes into Cancer during an already tumultuous year, I think you see like a lot of female issues. I think you see a lot of minority issues, a lot of things that need empathy surfacing and being addressed. So that is exciting to me.
Yeah.
Aliza Kelly also made a note about Jupiter in Cancer tends to bring up and help heal ancestral wounds.
Okay.
So I think if you think, this is just my take on it, if you think of the ancestral wounds and how they sort of apply to like current patriarchal standards, procedures, programming, I think you'll see a lot of shifting there.
Okay, good.
But I think that will end up cutting a lot of people off.
Yes, ruffling some feathers.
Yeah, I think you'll see more and more people not going to those family reunions or not holding that ancestor in that light that maybe they did before, or finding some surprises. Like, I think you'll see a lot of that too.
Yeah, I mean, you're not healing ancestral wounds without causing some sort of friction among that family, right? Like someone has to be the change.
Can I say something controversial?
Sure.
When I see, especially people in power, because I want to relate it to this Jupiter thing, like people who run our education system, who run financial institution, like things like this, okay, like law and how we bring justice to the world, okay? When I see people running those things who are clearly very corrupt, and they're speaking and they're talking about how certain people shouldn't have rights or whatever their backwards agendas are,
right?
Okay, I literally see someone who is refusing to even look back and heal their ancestral wounds. No, like they won't even be aware of any. They're pretending that those wounds are like these like great achievements.
Well, right, because when you're healing ancestral wounds, you have to take accountability for the things that your ancestors didn't take responsibility for.
Yes.
So like rather than saying this country is built on genocide and the slave trade and like you can't, some people can't look at that.
Yeah. Like I'm thinking of the clip of Elon Musk saying that like everyone was a slave, not just black people. Do you know? I know I'm not trying to bring that up, but like,
no, we should bring it up. It's insane.
Okay. But like, that is an example. It's an example of a lot of terrible things. I'm not trying to like just make it about this.
Right.
But it's an example of someone who didn't ever do that work. Like his ancestral wounds he's carrying and passing.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think there's going to be something interesting in how this affects the actual personal people in those positions.
Right. The reckoning of that.
Not just the system itself, but the people.
Right.
I think you're going to see something interesting happening there. And I don't think those people are going to go like gently into the good night. So I'm wondering what that's going to look like. And I'm not trying to be like alarmist. I'm just thinking like that's not going to be smooth.
No. I mean, Elon Musk isn't going anywhere gently. I mean, he's just burning the place down with him as he goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because Cancer in that sign, like that's real different. That's going to be a lot of people are like way out of alignment.
Exactly.
So, we'll see. Okay. July 7th, Uranus moves into Gemini. Okay. It's been in Taurus since 2018.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember 2018?
I do.
It was the start of the crumbling. Do you remember the talk of that? I mean, this is pre-COVID, but this encompasses COVID. And 2018 was really the first time I remember people starting to talk about what a ridiculous year 2020 was going to be.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Like there was discord. There was a lot.
Yeah. Well, it was 2016 was the first Trump era.
Right.
So we were in the thick of that.
We were in that.
everything was on fire. Yeah.
So Uranus in Gemini is like change, innovation, freedom, rebellion.
Okay.
Now, this is another Aliza Kelly shout out. I use her a lot. I really do like her stuff. I check it with a bunch of other stuff. I check.
Yeah.
The Astro Twins are a great resource as well that I like to use. The New York Times has a lot of great articles about astrology that you can go. They have a couple different astrologers, just to shout out all the sources.
Yep.
But she pointed this out, and then I went and verified it. So about every 84 years, there's some sort of historical conflict, and Uranus is always in Gemini during that time.
Really?
So previous Uranus and Gemini dates were 1941 to 1949, 1858 to 1866, 1774 to 1782. So like,
wow, interesting.
Those are very significant, tumultuous, but bringing upon good change times. One thing I would just like to say, because if you look at, I don't want to go into like the details of all of those dates because that seems like a weird history lesson, but historically we tend to like make these big changes, but like not far enough.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Steps.
Like, I want to say this carefully too, but like I'm thinking of like America breaking away from England and like that, the revolution, all of that kind of stuff. No, I don't want to put that in like a super positive light because we fucking stole land from indigenous people. Like, so I'm not trying to make that a heroic story. However, there was some positive change in that.
For white people.
Right. So there's this positive change for people, but it doesn't include everybody. It doesn't include women. It doesn't include people of color. It's like, here's some great stuff for white men, but we make everything a little bit better for everyone else. And so because it's just enough a little bit better, we all accept it.
Right. Yep.
So I'm just pointing out, like, can we maybe this time not
push
do that?
It further? Right. Exactly.
Because it's just going to happen again in 84 years.
Yep. Exactly.
And I don't think I'm going to be around in 84 years. So, like, I'd like to see some of this.
Yeah, exactly.
So, at least not in this form, Jamie.
No, exactly.
Another thing with Uranus is, like, how people express their thoughts. So that also makes me think of social media a little bit.
Yes.
So that change, and it coming into Gemini. Gemini is actually an energy that I don't mind.
I don't either.
But it seems, it's never, I don't find Gemini to ever be like really bold. Like it's kind of like a lot, it's like a little bit of a lot of things.
Yes.
Whereas like Taurus, which was in before, that's like a lot more of like a concentrated, intense energy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I'm really interested to see how that kind of plays out and hits.
Same.
And then I would be remiss if I didn't tell everybody the Mercury retrograde dates.
Oh, yeah.
For the year 2025.
Yeah.
I mean, we started in retrograde. So
right.
Like, yeah. But we have March 15th to April 7th. Okay. And that one starts in Aries, ends in Pisces. We have July 18th to August 11th. Mm-hmm. That's in Leo the entire time.
Okay.
That's during your birthday?
That's my birthday, yeah.
And then we have November 9th to November 29th. That starts in Sagittarius. And that one ends in Scorpio, Jamie.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So that is communication, travel, an exchange of energy from one person to another. Contracts, yeah. You know, people will say stuff like, don't sign any contracts during Mercury retrograde. I don't think that's realistic.
No, just be aware.
Yeah, I think of astrology as like a weather forecast. Like, you could walk out the door and be fine if you never looked at what the weather was going to be. But wouldn't it be better if you knew to have a coat or gloves or an umbrella? Right. Like, that would be nice.
And Mercury is just it can be so many different things. Like, some people, it's like, they find themselves arguing with people. Like, yeah, sometimes it's super literal. Like, remember that time my husband broke an air conditioner? Like, he literally
physically broke it.
Like, literally drilled into one and broke it. And I was like, I looked at the date and I was like, oh, this is fucking Mercury. Like, it was, it just hits people so differently. Like, obviously, depending on what sign it's in and stuff like that. But, and then like, I always feel like I get a little bit harder hit by the shadows of it. Yeah. Like right before and right after than the actual time period. Just depends.
It really does depend. I tend to notice throughout the year that like different retrogrades have this like concentration in a different area. Like there'll be a retrograde where 2 appliances die. And then there'll be another retrograde where I literally don't want to talk to other human beings. I hate them all. Every message I send is misconstrued or taken. And then there'll be another one where like nothing saves on my computer or it crashes. Like I just feel like there's always one thing that it's like surfacing. And listen, as somebody who loves to excavate the meaning of everything all the time, maybe to a fault, I think it's important to not be too obsessed with doing that.
Right.
I think you should be like, look for it, but like don't stress yourself out about it. Like people get real like freaked out during Mercury retrograde. And I think it's just one of those things where it's just gotten the wrong kind of press. And as much as I like people talking about astrology, sometimes I'm like, is this the only astrology event you pay attention to?
I know. It's like you hear about Mercury retrograde and then like people's sun signs. That's it.
That's it.
Right.
And you're like,
there's
have
so
you
much
thought
more
about Venus retrograde? Because I bet that's causing more havoc.
Right. Or your rising sign. Like
or your rising sign.
There's so much more.
All right. So I'm going to give you a quick recap, a little quick rundown of what to expect for the year. So we've started in Mars retrograde, which is taking action. That's going to be a little dicey until about February 23rd. It goes direct. And as Jamie mentioned, you can still be affected by shadow periods. It's not like on that day you wake up like it's crystal like ding, clear, everything's different. It's just that the energy has shifted or is shifting back into that. It's more normal or typical place. Okay. Then March 1st to April 12th, we have Venus retrograde. I think in your personal lives, this is where there's the most turmoil. Right. Okay. Unfortunately, that's going to be happening at the same time as some other things. But this is like love, beauty, wealth, and personal level, big shifts. But like a lot of little things, the energy feels funny around. So just be aware of that. So personal stuff right here. Right. Okay. Now you're going to go into Neptune and Aries on March 30th. Now listen, again, I don't think you're going to wake up on the 30th and shit's going to be crazy. Maybe. This is a big shift. But this time of like the 30th on through the rest of the year, this is where I think you're going to see a lot of change in politics, in systems, in the patriarchy. This is when those kinds of things look to be going haywire. Do I think it's going to start before that? Right. Yes. Do I think you're going to see 20th. A lot of the stuff? Yeah. Okay. And also social media at this time. Okay. There's going to be some big changes there. Saturn also enters Aries on May 24th. So this is like the end of May. This is boundaries and structure and dreams. And so there's a parallel here when Neptune's already in Aries causing some shit. Saturn comes in too. So this is like dreams, illusions, like big picture concepts, visions, visionaries, this kind of stuff with boundaries and structure and like how you keep everything together. Perfect. Okay. So this is a lot in the same sign. And Aries is not like a quiet sign. No. Aries is like da 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 da. Yeah. Look at me. So, okay. And a reminder, the last time Aries was in Saturn was 1996 to 1999. Okay. So what was going on then? Some of that stuff's going to resurface. Right. Okay. June 9th, Jupiter in Cancer. Okay. This is travel, wealth, education, law, luck. This is more systemic changes, but this is where you're going to see minority stuff. This is where you're going to see female stuff. This is when you're going to see ancestral wounds in people that haven't healed them be very affected who are in power. Okay. This is June. This is the summer. Brace yourself. The beginning of summer. Okay. July 7th, Uranus in Gemini. It's been in Taurus since 2018. This was all through the pandemic. These are the years, every 84 years, there's historic conflict. That doesn't necessarily mean violence. It means conflict, like big conflict in the world. Okay. That creates big changes. So just be ready. Okay. And then to remind you, Mercury retrograde is in March, July, and November. Okay. So those will kind of be disrupting things along the way. Right. Overall, I'd say 2025 feels to me like the opposite of 2020.
Yeah.
2020 felt to me like the start of like the light shining on the shit. You know how we talk about the tower card and the light comes on and then everything crumbles?
Yeah, because you see it. You see all the cracks in the rot and the disease.
And I think 2018 really started it. I think 2020 we started to really see systems that were not working correctly start crumbling.
Right.
We started to see that there's this real large group of people we didn't want to admit, but that is true, that are very racist, very misogynist, that wanted a platform to celebrate those things.
Right.
We saw people standing on the precipice of a bunch of pipelines, primed and ready, and snatched into those things. And before this time, we were not doing enough about it. We're still not doing enough about it. But before this, we were not.
We also saw the rise of the billionaire class. You know, the number of billionaires severely multiplied. The money, the wealth that they were hoarding has multiplied, especially since COVID. They've all become increasingly more wealthy and more powerful. Now they're buying the presidency.
Yes. And the problem with it for them is that we can see who they are now. And we can now, they're kind of just admitting to being Nazis now.
Yeah, no, I mean, as soon as Trump is inaugurated, I think the curtain's going to open and we're going to see behind all of that. I mean, I think that the masks come off.
Yeah.
And I think we've been fighting to see that, but I think that now they hold so much power as oligarchs that I don't think they care anymore.
Right. And I think if you study history at all, you know that's the beginning of the true end.
The end. Right.
When that happens, because they lose the plot.
Right, exactly.
It's like
they're drunk on their power.
Yeah. It's like the narcissism becomes so strong that everyone is like, wait a minute. You know, there's those moments where people who are like, you know, I like these things Trump says, but like, I don't know about this. Like, they can't keep their head buried in the sand anymore.
Yeah, you can't deny it anymore. No. And it's becoming, you know, and the whole like Luigi situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where people really calling out like the power that people have over our lives, like that class war that you know we talked about, that we're going to talk about in our next episode. That like it is a class war, and we are seeing not only the wealth that people are hoarding, but the power they have over our lives, over our healthcare, over like whether we literally live or die.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And people are finally seeing it and finally having to own up to the inequalities.
You know what? Well, there's a lot of things that bother me, but what bothers me about people claiming they finally see it is that that's bullshit.
It's been there the whole time. Exactly.
It's that you were able to bury your head.
Correct. Exactly.
It was that you were able to look away. You were able to avoid it. And now it's become unavoidable.
Or it was only a problem for Black people or for gay people.
Yeah, because your privilege afforded you to look away.
Right. So like, but now that it's affecting you and now that it's a problem for you, you want to do something about it. Like, fine, come on, join the fight. But like, also acknowledge that it took you too long to get here.
I had a like weird issue come up recently where a friend of mine said, things are so crazy that I just don't watch the news anymore.
I hear that all the time.
And I had a lot of trouble with it because I always want to have an empathic response, because this is a person who I know is an empathic person who cares a lot about things, but I do want to hold space for the fact that it's a lot.
Yeah.
And that you need to protect your mental health.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that's fair. And I also have a big problem with people when they say, I'm not paying attention because it's too hard for me.
Well, what about the people who are living that news?
Right.
Like, what about the people who, and I'm not just talking about like, the news talks about entire groups of people.
Yeah.
Like, what about them who they don't get the choice to like look away and turn away?
Right.
You know?
It bothers me. And again, it's complicated. I get it. I'm not saying you should make your whole life about watching news.
No, but
yeah, I do think it's irresponsible to not be informed. And I do think that you are leaning into your privilege in a disgusting way if you choose that.
Well, and that's what they are betting on.
Yeah.
They're betting on us all being so overwhelmed.
Yeah. That we won't.
That we turn away, that we can't handle it, and we look away, and we allow them, the billionaires, the CEOs, the politicians, they're betting that we're just going to continue to look away and allow all this shit to happen, because that's what we've been doing for centuries.
Yeah. I feel like this doesn't happen to me anymore very often because I am very selective of who I spend my time with or give energy to. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of like when people are like, "Oh, you're such a bad time. Like, why do you have to always be talking about the patriarchy or always be talking about the, problems in the system?" And it really drives me crazy because I'm thinking like, I mean, first of all, I don't think that I'm 24/7 talking about it.
No.
But like, what do you have to talk about that's more important?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Like, fine, let's take a break. And for 10 minutes, let's talk about whatever Real Housewives are doing. Fine. Okay. Fine. Mm-hmm. But then I want to get back to it because like, right. How is it not consuming you?
Right.
So it's real tough and it's real tricky. I don't know if anyone's got like awesome responses to things like that, but I'm always kind of like, yeah, I don't think we should look away. I think you got to find a way to manage. I think you got to find some good tools. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Well, it also speaks to the fact that like they don't understand that that's actually how the system works.
Yeah.
Is that like they probably don't even realize that they're in a system. Yeah. But like that, like Real Housewives, Super Bowl, that's all like the bread and circus. That's all the distraction that's created so that we don't talk about what's really wrong. That's what I mean about them banking on us not paying attention. Is like they know that we're going to be distracted by,
and that we want to be distracted.
You know what I mean?
It's
easier.
Awful. The system is also designed to not give you enough stuff to do to fight it.
Right.
Because I know a lot of people, myself included, who would right now dedicate their life to changing it. And like, I do a lot of things, but it's not enough, and there's not enough things, and it's hard to find the things, and it's hard to do the things.
Right.
And like, you have to have a little bit of privilege to be able to do them anyway. So it's like, it's really frustrating. So I get the want to just like zone out of it. And I'm not saying not to do that sometimes.
No, but that's the point of capitalism.
You're right.
Like that's the function of capitalism, is so the oligarchs can keep us tired and busy and exhausted so that we don't do anything. That's the function of capitalism, is to make them more money without them having to do anything and to keep us exhausted.
Yeah. And it works. It's very effective.
Look around you. It's like it's an incredibly well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
It just, the purpose of it sucks.
You've been so conditioned to just think that's life.
Right.
That it's really difficult to even know when it's happening.
Exactly.
And I do think that 2025 is going to be a real disruptor of all of your distractions. And I think if you try to go into this year burying your head in the sand, not watching the news, like, listen, all empaths don't like to watch the news. Every person who is on the spectrum of empathy, more than a smidge, feels shitty when they watch the news.
Right.
I understand. I hear you. Me too.
Right.
Okay. It's disheartening and frustrating. And I also see myself in every person, every time, on every single thing. I understand that. But I don't think it's going to be plausible to go through this year not paying attention without real dire circumstances.
Right. I agree.
Like, there's consequences to that.
I agree.
You have to be informed. You have to be informed enough. And, the other side is loud and talking and paying attention to strange places, but they are. So if you're not, that's like the silences with the oppressor shit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So find a way to do it. Find a way to balance it.
Exactly.
Is the point.
Yep.
Stop.
In whatever way you can, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
I would like to know if people are looking up their own personal stuff for 2025.
Yeah, your own astrology.
Yeah, I want to know how much you think it's like flowing with this. I looked up just a little bit of mine, mostly just sun sign stuff. That's very easy to find. You got to dig a little harder for the other stuff.
Yep.
And it was pretty
accurate,
pretty in tune.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So I'd like to know that from people. But I think we should go pour over our charts with a cup of coffee in our hand. What do you think?
Definitely.
All right, let's do that.
Hey everyone, Heather and I have an ask for you. If you love this episode or if you love the IGG, can you do us a favor? We need you to go onto whatever platform you listen on and download, subscribe, like, love, whatever it's asking you to do. Can you go do those things for us on the platforms that you listen on? It would mean so much to us.
Thanks for listening to our episode. For a way to get in touch with us, please visit our website, intuitivegirlsguide.com. We love hearing your feedback on our episodes.